Howdy y'all, it's your old pal Trueshack, and I'm here to finally talk about my Harley Benton TE-80 Deluxe Series guitar, which showed up at my place from Thomann over in Germany back in November 2017. It's taken me a long time to get any other material up about this guitar, and I've been chomping at the bit to do it. I do not have any sound samples on this video. I hope to have those soon. There's a technical issue I've got to work out with my recording rig, but I figured there's no reason why I can't talk about this very lovely instrument. Now, it looks very familiar. It has a Telecaster style shape, but the Telecaster is not the instrument that inspired it. It's actually the H.S. Anderson Mad Cat guitar, which was built back in the early 70s. And this style of guitar is very famously associated with Prince. If you're familiar with his work and you've seen Purple Rain, you've seen a guitar that looks like this. I believe the version he used was made by Hohner, the harmonica folks, a little bit later. But anyways, that's where the inspiration for this instrument comes from. And I think it's really cool that somebody used that instrument as inspiration. You can still get some H.S. Andersons and some Honers. They're still out there on the market. They're not very common, and you will have to save up for a little bit of time to get into one of those. But for the Harley Benton version, you can have one of these delivered to your door for under $250 US. All right, so let's talk about the good stuff, the stuff I really like about this guitar. And I alluded to this in my intro, but it's just a good looking guitar. It looks cool. I mean, it's got this flame top here, which you can see. Might be a veneer, I'm not sure. The back has some very nicely grained ash. And it has these, details like the striping, the binding, this interesting pickguard configuration. I mean, it's an eye-catching guitar. It has a traditional look to it just by virtue of borrowing from a very famous single-cut guitar, but it's immediately different. I think the second thing that I really like about this guitar is it just feels solid. I mean, just as one big hunk of wooden steel, it feels very well built. First of all, it's made out of ash, so it's got a fair amount of weight to it. This might be one of the heaviest guitars I have, but it just feels really well put together. The body and the neck feel very tightly joined. It's obviously got a lot of weight to it. The hardware, which I'll talk a little bit more about, the hardware feels pretty good. It doesn't feel like a thrown together instrument or something that was just made out of cheap scraps or anything like that. The other thing I really like about this guitar, and this is going to be more on the personal preference side, but it's got a big fat neck profile. I took out my digital calipers and I just kind of did a quick test of the thickness at the first fret and at the 12th, and it's 9/10 of an inch. I mean, that's definitely, I don't know if it'll be apparent how thick the neck is, but it is a very full neck profile, very vintage feeling neck profile. And then the final thing I'll highlight that I like are the pickups. I'll be straight up, they are not world beater pickups, but I think they sound very good. And again, considering what you're paying for this instrument, these are pickups that if you didn't have it in the budget to swap out, or you weren't technically inclined to do so, I really think you could get by with the pickups in here. To be honest with you, I've kind of thought about maybe swapping in something a little bit hotter. These are certainly very vintage voiced, and they are Strat pickups. They are not traditional Telecaster type pickups. But I don't know. I don't think I need to do that right away. Now, the stuff that, we'll just say the other stuff. Now, I told you I liked the neck profile, the big fat vintage style neck profile. Um, that's great. Where I'm less impressed though is kind of the general fit and finish on the neck. As much as I like playing this big heavy duty neck shape, I kind of wish that the nut, it's a little bit crooked. It's not a showstopper, but sometimes I can feel it against the edge of my thumb. There is also on the edge of the fretboard, or the top where the frets are installed, you may be able to see where the finish, they've sanded through the finish on the edges. That's not too big a deal either. I think over time that will get dirty, and you'll have a relic Harley Benton then, or at least a relic looking Harley Benton. But in terms of finish, that's something you shouldn't have happen, I think, regardless of the price. Now the other thing, and this kind of fits into the neck finishing category for me, are the frets. Again, I love the profile on this. The frets are a little bit odd. They feel very, very soft. I already am seeing the beginnings of some wear in parts where I usually cause a lot of fret wear to occur. They're not quite seated in, some of the frets are not quite seated fully. Again, we're talking a sub $200 guitar. But the thing for me with the frets, and this is something I've had to find a way to get used to, the shape of the frets is a little bit different. Instead of your typical rounded crown, they almost have kind of like a bit of a peaked shape, but they're not narrow frets. They're quite wide, I think. And it's taken me a little while to get used to that. Now, generally speaking, the hardware is pretty good. Again, we're all looking at this through the lens of a sub $200 guitar. And let's be honest, you can see where that price is a factor. The switch feels very good, but it doesn't feel like it's going to last a whole long time. That's not a big deal. People change out switches all the time. And I guess if you use this enough, if you use any guitar enough, you're going to be changing components. So the knobs feel fine. The tuners actually feel all right to me too. I think some folks have thought that the tuners are a little off. The bridge, however, is kind of odd. The saddles, let me turn around this way. The saddles, I feel like, are very high mounted off the guitar. And I don't know if that's a neck angle thing. I don't know if that's just this particular style of bridge, and the bridges I'm used to playing are different than that. Not a showstopper, once again, but it just, it feels like if you wanted to put a more robust bridge on this thing, you might have some compatibility issues just because of the way that the saddles appear to be mounted. All right, so what's my verdict? I kind of look at it this way. If somebody handed me this guitar and I went ahead and put it through its paces and tried it out and got to know it, and then they came up to me and said, what kind of price tag would you expect to see on this instrument if you saw it in a music store or online? Honestly, I would expect $350 to $400. I mean, it is a good looking guitar and it's well built, all things considered. Now, the flip side of that is if I paid $350 to $400 for it, there are some things that would disappoint me. Particularly the nut, the fretwork generally, and the sand through up on the neck. But I didn't pay that, right? None of us have, as far as I know. we're all paying, between 230 and 250 for it if we're in the United States. So, hey, it's a great deal for an instrument like this. And I think this is a great instrument for somebody who is obviously a major Prince fan, but doesn't have the money for an H.S. Anderson or a Hohner. If you're just looking for something interesting to add to your collection without breaking the bank, again, a great choice. And, if you're a weekend warrior or somebody who gigs locally, every couple months or so, I think this is a great backup or even a great main guitar if your funds are limited, but you want something that's solid enough to handle the rigors of live playing. So overall, I think it's an excellent instrument. I would recommend it. Certainly if you're a tinkerer, people love to kind of mess around with Harley Bentons because their cost is so low that they can invest additional money into customizing them further. I've certainly thought about that with this, but I'm in no rush to do it. I hope to have sound samples for you soon, but in the meantime, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all later.